Hello and welcome into my 5 draft busts that you want to avoid for fantasy football for the year of 2023. Number 1 for me, and I've pounded the table all offseason, Tony Pollard. I am out on Tony Pollard. Look, I like him as a player. I think he is talented, but the coaches are bad. The O-line, besides Zach Martin and the other guard there, I'm forgetting his name right now. It's shaky. Tyron Smith hasn't stayed healthy in a couple seasons. I don't know that he will play a full season. And the depth is lacking behind, those couple of decent options that they still have as holdovers from that once dominant offensive line. The team just lacks depth all around. When you look at beyond CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks, you look at beyond Tony Pollard, I like Deuce Vaughn as the new Darren Sproles, but obviously Deuce Vaughn is not going to carry a workload. What is this team even doing? They just traded for Trey Lance. They just sent a 4th round for Trey Lance just because they want to, bother Dak. This is supposed to, I guess, be competition for Dak somehow, or, because in 2 years Dak's contract is up or something, and they're going to move on and move to Trey Lance, who just got beat out by Sam Darnold. How much sense does that make? So I really don't know what the Dallas Cowboys are doing, and I honestly don't think that they know either. And then, like I mentioned, the coaching, Tony Pollard succeeded in an outside zone run scheme. The new offensive coordinator, Brian Schottenheimer, not only wants to reduce rate of play in wishes with Mike McCarthy, that's where that's coming from, is they want to basically have less offensive plays, which means less opportunity for fantasy points. They also want to change it to an inside zone scheme, which doesn't really fit what Tony Pollard does. Pollard can find some creases inside sometimes, but if you're just going to run him up the center's ass 20 times a game, that's not his style. And then on top of it, as if all that wasn't bad enough, the schedule is horrible. It might be one of the worst in the NFL. You look at, they're having to deal with the NFC North. Those division games against the Eagles, the Giants, and the Commanders, all of those are good defensive squads. The Eagles are fantastic. The Giants are excellent. Even the Commanders are pretty good. And then you look at, they also have to deal with the AFC North, so they're also going to have to play the Patriots, the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Jets. And again, that is 4 pretty good to great defenses. So you're already talking about 7 to 8 games on the schedule. If you actually go look on Sleeper, they have 3 to 4 positive matchups all year. This could get really ugly for Dallas, and I'm just trying to avoid them as much as possible.
What's in the box? What's in the fucking box?
Give me the gun.
He just told you. You lie!
Next up for me, number 2, T. Higgins. Look, I love T. Higgins. He's a good real-life football player. He's fantastic. On most teams, he could be a 1A, but the fact is he's on a team with Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is going to cap his potential. I don't see T. Higgins suddenly emerging and having a 12 to 1,300 yard season and 12 to 15 touchdowns. And where he's being drafted ahead of DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. Metcalf, you can argue, but I would much rather have DJ Moore and Keenan Allen this year over T. Higgins. I like T. Higgins as a player, but there's no way I'm taking him over those two guys. So because of that, and because there's just other positions, would you rather have T. Higgins or Mark Andrews? To me, it's easy. I'll take Mark. If I'm at 212, for example, in a 12-team league, I'm not taking T. Higgins. I'm taking Mark Andrews all day there.
No! You tell me that's not true. That's not true.
Become vengeance, dude.
Nah, she's all right. You tell me.
Speaking of a tight end, Kyle Pitts, I'm so sorry, but look, Arthur Smith is not going to allow him to succeed. It's not because, I joke Arthur Smith hates Kyle Pitts. That's not the reason. But the fact is, Arthur Smith runs probably the most in the NFL of heavy 2 tight end sets, which are meant for, heavy run blocking schemes. And that's not what Kyle Pitts does. So he's basically trying to put, in this case, it would be a round peg in a triangle hole. Because it's like, Kyle Pitts is so smooth as a receiver and a route runner. And it's like if you put him in 3 wide receiver sets and let him be the sole tight end in that and just, run middle of the field like option routes, maybe split out wide a couple times where he's split out as like another slot receiver. Good luck having a linebacker or a safety cover Kyle Pitts in those areas one-on-one. But that's not what's happening. That's not how Kyle Pitts is being utilized. Kyle Pitts is basically being asked to be a blocker half the time. So even though, and hopefully Arthur Smith is able to see the error of his ways and change. But for the most part, like a lot of these NFL coaches are extremely stubborn. They do not really change much, even when they are like, being fired and going from system to system. It's like they're carrying their failing systems with them as opposed to trying to adapt. So to me, I don't really foresee, Kyle Pitts just emerging suddenly in an Arthur Smith-led offense. Now, if, Arthur Smith, if they have a really bad season this year, which I think, people aren't really expecting them to crater. If that did happen by chance, then Arthur Smith would definitely be out. I think he's already a little bit on the hot seat. Then you could see potential for Kyle Pitts down the road. But them two together is just, instead of peanut butter and jelly, it's more like mustard and hot garbage. That's basically I can't think of a worse combo.
No! This is not how this was supposed to go.
Number 4 for me, Dak Prescott. I mean, we already touched on, I think the whole Dallas offense is just toxic right now. And the fact that they would trade for Trey Lance. Look, regardless of what you think about Trey Lance as a player, and this is not me saying that I think Trey Lance is coming in to take Dak Prescott's job. That's not what I'm saying at all. But the fact that, like, Jerry Jones would make a trade for Trey Lance right now and just kind of bring in all that drama for no reason. You absolutely did not need Trey Lance. And it's like, I get, you can bring in Trey Lance and see what you get out of him for a 4th round pick. It's like, what you're going to get is a circus. You're basically just asking and bringing in, you're like going to the 49ers and say, hey, that problem that you have, like that media circus you're having with that quarterback, let me have that. And now it's going to maybe it affects my starting quarterback. We already saw Dak Prescott. It's coming off like a pretty horrific year. And so now it's like the immediate reaction on Twitter is insane. It's like everything from one side of the aisle to the other of like, Trey Lance is a bust and he's coming in as the 3rd string quarterback behind Cooper Rush or whatever his name is there, the backup. And then the other side of the aisle that Trey Lance is coming for Dak Prescott's job and is going to take over by the end of the year. It's like, man, two things can be true at the same time. Dak is a good starting quarterback. His job is not in danger from Trey Lance. But bringing Trey Lance in is not necessarily a good move for this team. Especially, like, constantly we hear from these, coaches of like, oh, well, I can't bring in X or Y or Z player because they're going to be a distraction to my football team. We've heard that excuse for Terrell Owens in the past. We've heard it for Colin Kaepernick in the past. But now you get to a guy like Trey Lance and it's like, oh, this isn't a distraction for your football team? Like, get out of here. Ugh. So, and the thing is, Dak Prescott's he's being drafted ahead of other there's so many quarterbacks. Like, if you're going to wait and take Dak Prescott, like, you may as well just wait and take Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Geno Smith, Jared Goff. There's a litany, Kirk Cousins. There's a litany of quarterbacks that you could take besides Dak Prescott that are going to produce basically the exact same or better and without all the drama and all the headaches. Like, to me, I'm out on this offense. I think by the end of the year, we're going to see a complete sweeping out of the coaching staff because Jerry Jones is going to get upset again. But, like, until Jerry Jones is not actually in control of this football team, this is almost like WWE level of, like, Vince McMahon in the last years having that stranglehold on the company where it's like, it's bad for business, and we're starting to see that. We've seen it in the past, but, like, it's becoming, more prescient by the year.
Look how they massacred my boy.
And then finally, we'll wrap this up because we're running long on the bus segment here. Kenneth Walker. I love Seattle running backs. I just don't love the value on Kenneth Walker. He's just too expensive for what I believe in is going to happen. Is just that even if Kenneth Walker is healthy for the entire year, let's just pretend that Seattle suddenly has healthy running backs for the entire year. This team heavily invested in Zach Charbonnet, and Zach Charbonnet is a better all-around running back in terms of being able to be used in the passing game than Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is a hard runner. He reminds me of like Thomas Rawls back in the day, or Alex Collins, rest in peace. Like the kind of guys who aren't necessarily pass catchers, and they're not really they're kind of undersized per se for like thumpers. These like 5'8" to 5'10", 215, 220 pound types, but they're solid. And so, I love Kenneth Walker. I do not love the 4th round ADP, and I'm out on that when I can just wait 5 rounds and get Zach Charbonnet. Ultimately I think he's either going to at least have a large role in the offense, probably the pass catching role, which I would prefer. And I see a path, even if they are both healthy, where by the end of the year, Zach Charbonnet actually ascends and becomes like the starting running back for this team, because I think that's what they drafted him to be. So that wraps up my bus segment. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you found that helpful and informative. I have a whole series of these top 5 that are out. Make sure you go like, subscribe, comment. And as always, catch you on the flip side.
His hair, whack. His gear, whack. His jewelry, whack. His foot stance, whack. The way that he talks, whack. The way that he doesn't even like to smile, whack. Me, I'm tired.